Welcome, wrestling fans, to a brand new episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. I am your host, Lance Brock. Thank you for tuning in tonight, December 14th. It's Wednesday night, and you know what that means. It's time to talk about a special episode of AEW Dynamite. Winter is coming. Live from Texas, and our commentators tonight, Tony Schiavone, Excalibur, and Taz. And we kick things off pretty big here tonight with match 5 of the AEW Trios Championship Best of 7 series. The Death Triangle, who is up 2-1, taking on the Elite. Good opener, and then we actually see Nick Jackson hurt his leg in this one, and he goes to the back for a little bit. The Death Triangle have a 3-on-2 advantage, and Nick Jackson does eventually make his way back into the match. But Penta uses the hammer, and the Death Triangle gets the win, going up 3-1 in the Best of 7 series. As the Death Triangle are going to the back, Kenny Omega gets on the mic, and he says for the next match, he wants the hammer to be legal, all weapons to be legal, because the Elite wants it to be a no disqualification match. They want match number 6 to be no DQ, anything goes. Match number 6. And then next up, we see the AEW World Tag Team Champions, The Acclaimed, making their entrance. Max Caster doing his usual rap. But then, all of a sudden, Anthony Bowens is attacked by Saddam Singh. And then we see Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt attack Max Caster as they go to in the ring. And then Jeff Jarrett appears from the crowd, I believe. Hits Max Caster with a guitar shot. And they leave the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn laying. And next up, one half, or not one half, maybe 1/3, I guess you could say, of the Ring of Honor 6-man tag team champions, Brian Cage representing the Embassy, taking on Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Pretty good match here. Jungle Boy gets the win. And then after the match, he calls out Big Bill, but instead Stokey Hathaway makes his way down the entrance. And then Jungle Boy goes down to confront him, and then Lee Moriarty comes out. Jungle Boy takes care of him, but then Big Bill, the former W. Morrissey, makes his way to the ring, or the the entranceway, I should say, and attacks Jungle Boy from behind. And next up on Dynamite, the House of Black is in action for the first time since making their way to making their return to AEW. They take on the Factory. We start things off and we see Nick Camarado throw his toothpick at Julia Hart, and then Julia replies with spitting the black mist into Nick Camarado's face. And then after that, the House of Black destroys the Factory. And the only one left is QT Marshall. And Malachi Black gets the pin on Marshall. Next up, we have the former Ring of Honor champion, the Ocho, Chris Jericho, in action, taking on Action Andretti, who has appeared on AEW Dark before. And this kind of looks at first like, oh, this is just going to be a squash match. Chris Jericho is going to get an easy win here, but actually is a competitive match. The crowd during this one starts chanting, "Let's go, Jobber." And believe it or not, there's an upset in this match. Action Andretti getting the win over Chris Jericho. And then just a little bit after this, on Twitter, on the official AEW Twitter page, they posted the usual picture that Action Andretti is all elite. So he is now signed to All Elite Wrestling. And then when we come back from the break, we see Chris Jericho in the back, and he snaps after that loss. And women's action up next. Ty Mello taking on Ruby Soho. Pretty good match. Soho gets the win, but then after the match, she is attacked by Anna Jay. And now it is time for the main event. But first, I didn't mention it earlier, but there were two very good promos backstage with the AEW World Champion MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, and the challenger Absolute Ricky Starks. And now it is time for the main event of AEW Dynamite. Winter is coming for the AEW World Championship. MJF taking on Ricky Starks. And these two have very good match here. Definitely a good TV main event. Would I say it was exact like maybe pay-per-view quality or anything? No. But for a TV main event, for one of these primetime specials that AEW has in between pay-per-views, I would say it was a good main event. MJF picks up the win with a low blow to retain the AEW World Championship. I thought it was an okay finish. He cheated, so still kind of made Ricky Starks look strong. Didn't really make him look too weak, or at least I don't think so anyway. Even in the loss, he still looked pretty good, worked a good match. But still, AEW World Champion Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF. And then Dynamite goes off the air. So that was Winter is Coming. And overall, I thought once again it was a good show. Didn't really have the third annual Winter is Coming, didn't really have like a major, it was a very good show, but I wouldn't say it really had any like a major bombshell like the first one. When I remember, that was definitely one of my favorite moments in AEW history, when Sting made his debut. Still remember when Tony Schiavone yelled out, "It's Sting!" And that was just a great moment, because most people were surprised that didn't know Sting was going to show up in AEW that night. And then, of course, had Kenny Omega winning the World Championship, getting the help from Don Callis. But still, this year's Winter is Coming, still very good episode of Dynamite. And now, I want to talk about the big news from today. I'm sure it probably surprised most of the whole pro wrestling world, and I know I was surprised by it, and that is the release of former WWE NXT Women's Champion Mandy Rose, whose her over-year reign, I believe, of NXT Women's Champion ended last night, losing the title to Roxanne Perez. And I have to admit, I was kind of surprised that they just had her lose the title on an episode of NXT TV and didn't save it for the next special. I know that's not till February, but for Vengeance Day. And then the next day, she is released from the promotion. And I know what I have seen so far, it had something to do with some kind of premium content or something being leaked online. And have to stay tuned to that news as more comes out. But as of right now, Mandy Rose released by WWE, and what I have read, it came to a shock to her and other NXT superstars. So before I wrap up this episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic, I just want to mention, right after I stop recording, I'm going to record an episode of Fanatic Unleashed, which I will be talking about the Vince McMahon documentary that aired last night on Vice. And I won't say too much here, but I thought it was pretty interesting. I don't know what anybody else thought of it, but I will be talking about the documentary on Fanatic Unleashed. Like I said, I will be recording that episode right after I finish this episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. So, Remember, everyone, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can email 360wrestlingpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, keep listening right here on Spreaker or wherever you listen to on podcasts. And please subscribe to the 360 Wrestling Podcast YouTube channel. I just got an email today that December's Pro Wrestling Crate has been shipped. So stay tuned for an unboxing video on the 360 YouTube. And until the next episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic, I am Lance, and I am a wrestling fanatic.